What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new 361 degrees DVD3. Let's get into them. And thanks 361 for sending me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is not sponsored, and as always, all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, are all my own. All right, now starting off in the uppers, if there's one word I could describe these as, it is tough. There is just a lot of really substantial material overlapping itself, which is really nice. Number one, in the toe box, you just get a really tough, gritty, almost like rubberized paneling. It almost looks like on the Luka 0.77, that almost like rubberized suede. As you go into the midfoot, you get paneling over top of paneling. And then on the lace line, number one, the lace line is reinforced, but then on the proximal 3 eyelets, you're actually getting metal reinforcements, and you're getting extra plastic reinforcements on the 2 right before the most proximal lace eyelets. So, you know, tie down on these, very, very confident. Same with the tongue. It does have 2 layers of padding going all the way through it, and some breathing channels on the outside, none on the inside though, which we'll see in a second. And then as you go into the rear foot, you do get a lot of high backing on the heel counter, and then pretty decent padding there on the ankle counter. And the tongue does have a nice low gusset in there. Not a ton of padding in the forefoot, which, like I said, we'll get to in a second. Now, speaking of all that, look at this thing on the breathability test with the heat gun on the heat mapping. They did heat up 99.25 degrees, which isn't terrible by any means. It's definitely not, just open pored mesh, put it that way. But if you look at, the images, especially on the side of them, you can see the whole shoe is lighting up. So heat is radiating out of that shoe, and 5 minutes later, the heat did drop dramatically inside the shoe as well as outside. So it does handle heat decently. So get on the breathability mapping with the fog machine, you can see, yeah, fog is getting out of the forefoot and those little holes there, and it's getting out of the sides of the tongue okay. But there is a little bit of moisture trapping there. Like I said, for what it is, and how substantial, how tough the uppers really are, really not terrible by any means. On the upper durability test, 10-second tie grit sandpaper, yeah, I mean, the burr does take off that pink coating, or the color of that coating. However, it doesn't get hardly through it, right? So it basically just makes it look weird. And then on the more proximal aspect, yeah, it does start to work through that. So I'd say if you're a true toe dragger on indoor courts especially, I think they'll be okay. They might start to look a little bit scuffed, but the integrity should still be there. Putting that all together in terms of heel slippage on these, if you don't have an orthotic in them, the heel slippage is none. This thing locks down in the best way. If you have an orthotic, even a bulky orthotic in there, heel slippage is very, very mild, really not noticeable whatsoever. The one thing I did notice about the uppers is because there is a lot of room from the metatarsals into the toe box, from the midfoot into the forefoot, there's just a lot of volume in there. Honestly, orthotics make these not bend and snap as much. If you don't have an orthotic in there and you don't have a really high volume foot, you can get a lot of bending and snapping right where these 2 panels meet. Now that does break in, but it does take a few days. It is noticeable for a few days. So if I had an orthotic in there, off the jump really wasn't all that bad. But if I didn't have the orthotic in there, that's what I noticed, really a lot of bending and snapping. Like I said, you can break it in easy enough, just it's gonna take some time. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown, this might be my favorite this year. I don't know, there's been a lot of good ones, but this one did not disappoint. Number one, you got Energex foam in the rear foot. It's really dense ETPU blend, but it does have, it's got some spring back to it. It feels like cookie dough, almost like an injection molded Phylon, but it's got a little bit more of the spring back. Maybe something like an Ultra Boost, so it's kind of right in the middle there. Nice feeling underfoot. Then in the forefoot, you have that CQT foam, which is CO2 infused thermoplastic. That's always super lively. But the best part of this is that the shank has an arch in it. It's in such an interesting configuration, right? So it's kind of triangular. It peaks in the midfoot. You do not feel it under the arch, which I thought maybe you would. It might be a little bit annoying, especially with my foot. I feel really anything kind of out of place on my arch because just the way my arch is. I did not feel it at all. I could feel the spring back, the potential energy. You can feel that thing kind of springing back at you, which is really cool underfoot. But there's actually 2 shanks there. The bottom one extends into the rear foot, top one extends into the forefoot. And because it is bottom loaded, but it peaks kind of in the middle of the shoe, then you also have, what I noticed is they have the more dense foam covering it and kind of going a little bit further over, almost like a diving board over top of it. I think that's also what makes you not feel it at all underfoot. But all that working together does give it a pretty nice spring back feeling. Plus you get the super responsive foam in the forefoot. Look at this thing on the bounce height test. Got 35 centimeters in the rear foot and then 45 in the forefoot. That's really no surprise, just given the makeups of the foam. That rear foot is meant to be stable, forefoot meant to be a little bit more lively, and that shank meant to kind of complement both. Yeah, I mean, especially because you do get some TPU going around the heel counter as well, because you do get an internal heel counter as well as that external heel counter. The whole thing just is really meant for rear foot stability, forefoot spring. And I don't know there's many other shoes that do it as well as this one does based on pure materials and engineering. I do think if you have a very low volume foot, especially just because of the forefoot, you better have either double socks or an orthotic in there to fill it out so that you actually can use the tools, right? So your foot actually can take up the whole shoe and use the shoe. But in terms of, if you're the right foot, this is just out of this world. All right, but getting into the outsole tread, it's really just a modified grid pattern going throughout the shoe. It is a full length tread pattern, which is great. You do have some exposed CQT foam in the forefoot, just that bend point allow the shoe to bend a little bit easier. And then you do get some like little undulations there, some like half circles, but it's mostly grid pattern. Look at this thing on the grip test ramp. It doesn't slip till 41 degrees, which is kind of an upper level and normal. The thing is, in terms of dynamic grip, on clean quartz, they're just phenomenal. They will not slip. On a really dusty court, I noticed the heel starting to slip out a little bit. The forefoot, no, honestly, I didn't notice much slipping, maybe a little bit of give once it got dusty. On polished concrete though, is where they actually grip a lot better, even on a dusty hardwood or vinyl court versus on a more slick outdoor court, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, they do pick up some dust. I did notice it more on push off versus stopping. That's where I noticed. So I mean, if you guys got some grip spray for these or a quick wipe down here and there, it's really not that bad. And like I said, if you keep them on clean quartz, especially with the torsional stability in the shoe, it's awesome. Look at this thing with speed ratio. This is nuts. Comes in at a 2.79, shank score of 0.5, brings that up to a 3.29. And yeah, like I said, I think if you're the right foot for them, as long as you're on a super like low volume, super narrow forefoot, yeah, I think as long as you can utilize the tools of the shoe and fill the shoe out, yeah, I think these things are wicked fast. They also have a ton of stopping power, right? They've got a really wide, broad lateral flange. You got a little plastic clip up there. I'm not sure how much that's doing, but it's nice to see. It's more reinforcement, plus shank extending into the forefoot. So yeah, like I said, as long as you can keep them clean, yeah, they're fantastic. On the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper. Yeah, I mean, not a millimeter of damage. Interesting thing is, durometer only comes in at 14.5. So, I mean, like I said, we've seen this though with the lower durometer rubbers. Like I said, it is a little bit of a softer, tackier rubber. So once again, it might pick up a little bit more dust, but also you are getting that softer, tackier rubber, lower durometer, and all the benefits of that, but also a lot of the benefits of a little bit more of a durable shoe. I would say in terms of protection, they're great outdoors. And I think if you don't produce a lot of friction outdoors, a little bit smoother, I think they're okay. I just think they just are best used indoors because the tread just interacts with those quartz better. All right, but getting into the DVD3's fit, like I said, this is where I think that more the dividing line is going to be. Number one, they have a 12-degree inflare, which to the naked eye, it looks like it's more, but it's not, it's 12 degrees. Then resting everted position is 1 degree, loaded is 3 degrees. What I noticed is actually the tread does undulate a little bit in the rear foot, then a little bit here in the forefoot, right under your 5th metatarsal, and then a little bit under the 1st metatarsal. I think that's where you're getting a little bit of that movement. But like I said, it's well within the range of normal. I mean, 2 degrees of eversion with loading is pretty darn solid, put it that way, even with a little bit of the undulations. Now, in terms of width, in the heel, they have a heel width of 6.9 centimeters, a narrowest midfoot measurement of 7.5 centimeters, and then maximum metatarsal width at 9.6 centimeters, and a toe box width of 10.7 centimeters, but then a toe box taper of only 25 degrees, so a little bit more mellow. Like I said, they just have a lot of volume from that midfoot into the forefoot. I did notice though on my left side, I actually did have a little bit of cramping when I had the bulkiest orthotic in there, where my 5th metatarsal styloid was. And honestly, I think it's right where the heaviest backing meets the meshing on the outside. So I think that's why I was having that. I don't think it was because of the width of the shoe. I think it was just right where my metatarsal lined up with the shoe. So I don't think that's gonna be for everybody. I'd say a narrow foot, yeah, I would be going down a half size on these to get the performance in the forefoot. A medium foot, I think you just can go true to size if you want. If you got an orthotic in there, I think true to size, double socking, like true to size. If you want the most performance out of these things, you're not putting an insert in them. Like I said, I'd probably go down a half size in them just to get that forefoot right. In terms of a 2E, I'd be going true to size. A 4E, yeah, I think you're gonna need to break them in a little bit just because of how tough the uppers are, but if you want all that performance, I'd say I'd try to go true to size. I mean, it's 9.6 centimeters at its widest, so I mean, it's wide enough for a 4E to break in true to size if you want to. You can go up that 1/2 size. Like I said, with an orthotic, or if you have a really high volume forefoot, then maybe just go up that 1/2 size as a 4E and you're just fine. But in terms of people I'd be recommending these for, people that need a lot of support in their shoes, right? These have all the best benefits of a really supportive rear foot, a really lively and springy forefoot. That shank is not only giving you a little bit of pop, but it's also providing a lot of structure to the shoe. So anything from heel pain, ball of foot pain, tendonitis, arch pain, people that need to wear orthotics, people that need to wear braces. Really, this is a very insulating, protective shoe, but you're also getting more of the performance, and you're also not getting a ton of weight. Like I said, if you're a really short, narrow foot, which means, you know, your heel to ball is a lot bigger than your heel to toe, like you have a really bad discrepancy there, you know, like short toe basically, then I could see these, you just won't fill them out as well in the forefoot. But I think anybody else is just gonna find really a great mixture, like I said, of performance as well as protection. And speaking of 361, if you do want to see the Joker 1 GT go under the knife, another just ridiculous performer, I'll leave that video linked up above. Make sure you subscribe down below. Respect, rubber, and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.